There comes a moment in every life not marked on a calendar, not celebrated by the world, when a person finally meets themselves. Not the version shaped by others' opinions, not the one camouflaged to fit into what society expects, but the raw, real self. This meeting doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in heartbreak, or in quiet rebellion. But it is in that moment when you choose yourself that your life begins to truly change. Not because the world around you suddenly becomes easier, but because the war within you starts to end. This is not a selfish act. It is the most sacred responsibility you hold, to walk toward your authentic self with clarity, courage, and compassion. Let us now explore 5 turning points that arise from the day you choose yourself. From the moment we enter this world, we are shaped by the need to belong. It's a natural human instinct to be accepted, to be seen, to be loved. And in our effort to secure this love and belonging, we often begin to trade parts of ourselves. For approval, it starts small. A child who loves to sing loudly is told to be quiet. A teenager with a unique style is mocked so they conform. A young adult with a wild dream is told it's unrealistic, so they tuck it away. Piece by piece, we begin to lose touch with who we really are. Not because we're weak, but because the fear of rejection feels unbearable. So we perform, we adapt. We become who we think the world wants us to be. But the cost is steep, because the more we seek approval from the outside, the more distant we become from our own inner compass. Choosing yourself begins with the breaking of this cycle. It means recognizing that the approval you've been seeking for years, whether from parents, peers, teachers, bosses, or even strangers, is not the measure of your worth. You begin to see that no matter how much you bend, shrink, or shapeshift, the approval you win will never feel enough if it requires the abandonment of your true self. The illusion is seductive. We think, if they like me, then I must be okay. But what if they only like the version of you that's a projection? Then what they're loving isn't you, it's a mask. There is something deeply liberating about realizing that approval is a game you don't have to play. You were never meant to fit into someone else's mold. You were born with a voice, a fire, a way of seeing the world that is uniquely yours. And choosing yourself means deciding that this voice matters, even if it shakes, even if it's not always understood. It means daring to be disliked, misunderstood, or even rejected, in order to remain true to yourself. A powerful example of this is Oprah Winfrey. Early in her career, she was told she was too emotional for television, that she should tone it down, stay neutral, be less expressive. She could have changed. She could have played by their rules, but she didn't. She chose herself. Her empathy, her emotional depth, her authenticity, these became the foundation of her success. The very things others told her to suppress became her superpower. When you stop living for others' approval, your decisions become rooted in clarity, not fear. You no longer ask, will they like this? But instead, is this right for me? That simple shift changes everything. You stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. And in that act, you reclaim your power. The truth is, approval is fragile. It can vanish in an instant, but self-respect, that lasts. And the day you choose yourself over approval, you begin to walk a path that is harder, yes, but also freer, more honest, and deeply fulfilling. Setting boundaries is often misunderstood. Many people associate boundaries with selfishness, with being cold or distant, but the truth is the opposite. Boundaries are an act of self-respect. They are the invisible lines we draw to protect our time, energy, and emotional well-being. Before you choose yourself, your boundaries are often weak or non-existent. You may say yes when you want to say no, stay silent when you want to speak, or tolerate behavior that leaves you feeling small, drained, or invisible. This isn't because you lack strength. It's because you've been conditioned to believe that keeping others happy is more important than being honest with yourself. You've been taught that love means sacrifice, that kindness means overextending, and that worthiness is earned by how useful you are to others. But something powerful happens the day you begin to choose yourself. You start to realize that your energy is sacred and finite. You begin to understand that you don't have to light yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You become aware of how much of your life has been spent trying to avoid conflict, not rock the boat, not disappoint anyone. And in doing so, you've abandoned your own needs, your own values, your own peace. Imagine a glass of water. If you keep pouring it out into everyone else's glass and never refill your own, eventually you'll be empty. That's not sustainable. Choosing yourself means understanding that your well-being is not a luxury, it's a necessity. You are no good to anyone if you are depleted. You cannot give from a place of exhaustion and resentment. Boundaries, then, are not walls that shut people out. They are bridges that allow for respectful, loving connections where both parties are seen and valued. There's a story about a nurse who spent decades working overtime, always saying yes, always putting others first. She began to suffer from chronic fatigue, depression, and resentment. It wasn't until she collapsed and was forced to take time off that she realized saying yes to everyone else was slowly killing her. Her healing began the day she started to say no, not out of anger, but out of love for herself. She said no to toxic coworkers, no to weekend shifts that stole time from her children, no to guilt that had ruled her life for years. And as she did, her health returned, her joy came back, and her relationships improved because they were finally built on honesty. The research is clear too. People who set healthy boundaries have better mental health, lower levels of anxiety, and more satisfying relationships. That's because boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about guiding yourself. They teach others how to treat you, not with ultimatums, but with clarity. So when you choose yourself, you give yourself permission to protect your peace. You no longer apologize for needing space, time, rest, or respect. You stop shrinking to fit into other people's comfort zones. You become the guardian of your own soul. And in doing so, you show the world not through words, but through your actions that you are worthy of care, starting with your own. In a world that constantly demands performance, choosing yourself means finally stepping out of the exhausting cycle of pretending and into the freedom of simply being. From an early age, many of us are taught that love is conditional. We are praised when we achieve, admired when we meet expectations, accepted when we conform. Over time, we begin to believe that our worth is directly tied to how well we perform. So we become experts at pretending to be happy when we're not, pretending to be strong when we're breaking inside, pretending to agree when we're silently screaming. We learn to put on a show for the world, hoping that applause will make us feel whole, but performing is exhausting. It is a daily betrayal of the self, a slow erosion of truth. The more you act for others, the more you lose your connection to your own soul. You become a character in someone else's script, and the real you gets buried beneath layers of roles and expectations. This kind of living creates anxiety, depression, loneliness even when surrounded by people, because deep down, you know that no one truly sees you. They only see the version of you that you've carefully constructed to survive. Choosing yourself means choosing to stop performing. It means saying, "This is who I am. I'm not perfect. I'm not always polished. But I'm real." It's a return to authenticity, even if that scares people. It means laughing loudly when something's funny, crying openly when something hurts, speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. It means no longer smiling just to make others comfortable when something feels wrong inside you. And in that rawness, something amazing happens. You begin to live, not just exist. Take the example of Robin Williams. A man who made millions laugh, who wore joy like a second skin. And yet, behind the scenes, he battled darkness and pain that few ever saw. He was beloved, successful, admired, but the world had fallen in love with the performance, not the person. And while his story is tragic, it also reminds us of a painful truth. Performance is not the same as peace. You can be surrounded by admiration and still feel unseen. When you stop performing and start living, you allow yourself to be known not by everyone, but by the right people. You give others a chance to connect with your truth, not your image. And you give yourself the chance to finally rest. No more pretending. No more chasing approval. Just the quiet, powerful dignity of being real. Real living starts when performance ends. You begin to make choices based on what feels aligned with your soul, not what looks good on paper. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What do I need?" You become gentle with yourself, patient with your process, and brave enough to show up exactly as you are. In that moment, you don't lose yourself, you find yourself, and everything begins to change. Success is one of the most powerful illusions that governs our lives. From the moment we can understand language, we are taught what success looks like. High grades, a prestigious job, a big house, a fancy car, admiration from others, and an endless stream of achievements to post about. We internalize these images so deeply that we start to believe they are universal truths. But the truth is, they are not. They are borrowed definitions handed down by families, culture, media, and institutions that never asked us who we truly are. So we chase success like it's the only map to happiness, only to find that, once we arrive, the destination feels empty. That is the painful moment many people reach the moment, when they realize they have climbed a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. Choosing yourself means pausing long enough to ask a question most people avoid. What does success actually mean to me? It is not an easy question. It requires you to confront all the expectations you've absorbed over the years and to be brutally honest with yourself. Maybe for you, success is not a six-figure job, but a life of creativity. Maybe it's not about recognition, but peace. Maybe it's not about being admired by thousands, but being deeply known by a few. Choosing yourself means allowing your life to be guided by your own internal compass, not by the applause or judgment of others. There's a true story of a Wall Street executive who left his job at the peak of his career. Everyone thought he was crazy. He had wealth, power, and respect. But every morning, he woke up with dread. He felt trapped in a life that looked perfect, but felt like a prison. He left to start a small woodworking business. He made less money, had no title, and rarely wore a suit again. But he smiled every morning. He said, "I finally feel successful, not because of how the world sees me, but because of how I feel inside my own skin." That is what happens when you choose your own definition of success. The danger of living by someone else's idea of success is that you can lose years or decades building a life that doesn't feed your soul. You can become so good at winning the game that you forget to ask whether it's a game you even want to play. And by the time you stop, it can feel like too much has been invested to turn back. But the truth is, it's never too late to redefine what matters to you. Never too late to rewrite the script. Never too late to step off the track and walk your own path. Choosing yourself means no longer chasing what looks good on the outside, but what feels right on the inside. It's a quieter kind of success, but it is richer, deeper, and far more sustainable. Because when you succeed by your own standards, you don't just win, you become whole. And that changes everything. Wholeness is not perfection. It is not the absence of flaws, pain, or struggle. It is the full acceptance of who you are: light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, joy and sorrow. When you choose yourself, you begin to step into the quiet power of wholeness. You no longer feel the need to hide parts of yourself to be loved, accepted, or seen. Instead, you understand that your worth is not conditional. It does not increase when you succeed or disappear when you fall. It is constant, unwavering, and rooted in your very existence. For most of us, life teaches us to fragment ourselves. We show the world our confidence, but hide our fear. We display our achievements, but bury our pain. We wear smiles when we're breaking inside because somewhere along the way, we were taught that showing the whole self is dangerous. Vulnerability was mistaken for weakness. Anger was called inappropriate. Sadness was met with discomfort. So we locked these parts away, believing that to be loved, we had to be polished, composed, and always in control. But what this really creates is a deep loneliness, the feeling that even when we are surrounded by people, no one truly knows us. Because we haven't let them. Choosing yourself is the decision to open the door to your own soul and say, all of you is welcome. Here, not just the strong, successful, or admirable parts, but the scared, hurting, uncertain ones too. You begin to integrate the pieces of your life that you once tried to forget the failures. The heartbreaks, the disappointments, and you recognize that they are not stains on your identity. They are proof that you've lived, felt, risked, and grown. Real wholeness is born in the place where acceptance meets compassion. There's a powerful lesson in the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. The cracks are not hidden, they are highlighted. The object becomes more valuable not in spite of its breakage, but because of it. This is how choosing yourself works. You stop hiding the cracks. You fill them with gold, your honesty, your resilience. And suddenly, you no longer feel broken. You feel beautiful in a new, deeper way. When you choose yourself and embrace your whole being, you begin to heal. Not by forcing the pain away, but by sitting with it, learning from it, and allowing it to be part of your story. You stop fighting your emotions and start listening to them. You stop rejecting your past and begin to honor how far you've come. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a lifelong process of peeling back the layers and returning to yourself again and again. But every step toward wholeness brings peace. Not the loud kind, but the deep kind, the kind that stays. The world may still try to pull you back. Into fragmentation, into performance, into perfection. But once you've tasted wholeness, you won't trade it for anything. Because being whole means being free. And when you are free, you are finally home.